Welcome to UO Today. I'm Steve Shankman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest is University of Oregon President Dave Frohnmayer. It's always good to have you here, Dave.
Steve, I'm really glad to be back with the audience, and thanks very much for making this forum available to all of us in the community.
Let's start with, we got a lot to talk about. Let's start with some recent news about the Eugene having been awarded the Olympic trials for track and field. The Oregon Track Club, I believe, made the application. How is the university involved in this event?
Well, the university is thrilled, obviously, that the event's coming. We are not the sponsor. The Oregon Track Club is the group that really put it together with a lot of help and a lot of community enthusiasm. But we're doing everything possible, from making Hayward Field available to, I'm sure, residence hall space and a lot of concerns that go into what is a very big event. But
How are you going to deal with Hayward Field, or what kind of changes have to be made?
Well, it's actually going to be quite substantial. There'll be temporary seating needed to bring us up to about 15,000 spectators, and my suspicion, knowing Eugene, is that they'll be full every single hour that the trials are there, and probably before and after. A scoreboard that has much more live interactive capacity. A lot of improvements to the field itself to make it a venue for multiple sports at a single time. All these things are highly desirable from the university's standpoint, and they do showcase Hayward Field, which by national officials, even far removed from Eugene, has been called hallowed ground for track and field. So this feels really good to me and to us, and I'm glad that the university is able to assist in a substantial way, as we will.
And when is it taking place?
This will be in the early summer of 2008, probably just after the turning of summer on the 21st. We'll undoubtedly see the community filling up with people well before that time, because it is a great venue. And even though I remember the first Olympic trials when my wife Lynn and I were very much younger than we are now in 1972, I remember what a thrill it was and what a statement about community and university that it made. So this is recovering that hallowed ground for an entirely appropriate and exciting purpose.
And you've got about, is it about 1,000 athletes expected and a lot of media?
Oh, yeah, I think it will really be a flood of people who care about this community or who will learn to care about the community as soon as they see it. So this is a very big event that showcases really the best about us.
Oh, good. While we're still in the realm of athletics, what about the basketball arena? Where are we at now? What's the status of its funding?
Well, we still have no funding for an arena. We're hopeful that private philanthropic funding will be forthcoming, but that's a very tall order. It's a very big order, and I think everyone knows that. But we have had a philanthropic contribution that enables us to move now into the design phase, which is very important. We need to know how it fits with the campus on the newly acquired property with the Williams Bakery. We need to know what it will cost, and of course you don't really have firm figures on that until you've gone well into the design phase. So this is a good logical next step. This is clearly a facility that we need and will desperately need in a very short couple of years. So I'm pleased that it's going forward, but I can't announce that there's any public or private deal that will enable us to give a go for it to begin a construction phase. We're not there yet.
So how many years do you think this is out into the future? I guess you don't want to.
Well, I can't speculate, and if we have a go-ahead from key donors, we'll move very rapidly, and we can expect to move very rapidly. If we don't, then it's something that will take a matter of years, which is a worry just in terms of the inflationary cost of building. But as I say, this is something that we need. We love Macarthur Court, but it's a very aged facility and just can't be improved to the state that we want it, and we think our programs, women's and men's, justify.
And you've got plans, don't you, for having the community participate in however this is going to develop?
Well, it will develop rapidly. I mean, we know the site, we know the general strictures of the university's designs and so forth. And we hope that there will be a give and take process, but it is something that if we get a go ahead, we'll move, I think, very quickly in order to contain the costs of what undoubtedly will be a multiple millions costing facility.
Now again, while we're in the arena of athletics, so to speak, there's been some concern about some unpleasant behavior recently among fans at the Oregon games. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment that I'm disappointed. In fact, even angry about it. This is not the image that we want to project as an institution. A few people, of course, can spoil a larger impression, and for every complaint that we get, I hear from dozens of people who believe that they're well treated. But the mixture of alcohol and boisterousness isn't good. And the fact is that as a university and a community, if we are really a winning program as we are, we don't need to belittle ourselves by behavior that's demeaning either of another side or of people who are trying to keep order and security in the facility. So it is something that's involved intense discussions over the past several weeks, internal to the university as well as in the media. And I welcome it if some of those who abuse the privilege of being a fan will just wake up. A long-standing gripe of mine, I got to tell you, is there's no excuse for booing the band from the opposing school, for heaven's sakes. And when our fans who went to the University of Oklahoma for the game last year came back, they were full of praise for the cordial and courteous way they were treated. You know, if we're really a winner of a program, we need to have the behavior that matches winners. Maybe
we should have that on the scoreboard.
Yeah. Well, it's something to be reminded of. We don't need second-rate behavior from anybody. We're proud of this university. We're proud of the community, and people who have to take that kind of occasion to show that they're juveniles, whatever their chronology, they don't really belong there.
What about the issue of alcohol consumption at games? Is that one of the things that's being looked at?
It's actually being looked at by the NCAA. And there's a variety of responses by institutions all through Division I, as you can well imagine. We don't think it's appropriate to talk about an alcohol ban. We see people who are able to use alcohol as a means of hospitality with tailgaters, and they have for years and years. It's served in the Mashofsky Center. It's served in the club suites. That isn't the place where the abuse is taking place. I do think it probably has something to do, Steve, with game time, and is one of the reasons why a game recently was not moved into a television slot at 7 o'clock, even though that might have been lucrative to us, because we do feel a larger sense of responsibility to the community. And I don't think we would go so far as some people have said for total alcohol bans, but we certainly think that responsible use of alcohol by anyone is an imperative, especially at a large event.
Now, also on the quite topical issue, there was a recent announcement about the University of Oregon's association with the Oregon Health and Science University and Peace Health. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, actually, you know, for all of the excitement this really brings to us internally, it's received maybe less notice than it really deserves. If we are on schedule, and we hope to be, by next fall at this time, we will have a class of medical students in Eugene, sponsored by a joint consortium of Sacred Heart, Peace Health, Oregon Health and Sciences University, and the University of Oregon. And I see this as winning for everyone. And the reason that we need to move so aggressively on this, and I'm talking now about us as citizens of this state, is that the number of doctors who are retiring is just quite shocking, and there will be a serious physician shortage in Oregon in 10 years. Well, you and I both know that the lag time to prepare a person through medical education will take about most of that 10 years, and if we don't start doing something beyond the capacity of Portland to take all these students, we're going to be losers as a state and as a citizenry, as people who care about health. So I'm very proud that the University of Oregon is taking part of this, this wonderful collaboration with the Sacred Heart, Peace Health, and we and OHSU developed almost spontaneously. It's almost spontaneous combustion. I mean, it's moved very quickly because we see so much mutual benefit for our communities in this.
So how many medical students do you think will be here, and at what stage in their education are they when they arrive in Eugene?
Well, it will vary. We think eventually that there will be students in years 1, 3, and 4. Now, which one we'll start out with is not clear yet, although I think those plans are advancing very rapidly. And probably in the initial instance, it'll be pretty small, 20, 30, 40, but it will move on to cohorts of maybe 100 per class when they're here. So this is something we can absorb in our capacity. We have lab space, or we can find it. And we complement Oregon Health and Sciences University, which is right now pretty much stuck up on the top of a hill or on the waterfront area that they're newly developing. But we really alleviate their space problems, and we give students some options about geographic locale and type of practice to engage in that are very important for medical education.
And we change the atmosphere here in a way, don't we, by having medical students along with law students. And
yeah, we not only have professional students of a new kind, but the other thing that we need to think about in a very positive way is that the impact on medical practice in Eugene, because there are many people who are accustomed to being doctors in a teaching medical school setting who might not otherwise come to Eugene, but who have a very high level of skill. And to bring that kind of resource almost magnetically to this community is a very, very positive statement about our future.
Yeah, very exciting development.
Yeah.
Let's talk about money now, the university's funding. The legislature finished its work in August, and they approved a 5.2% increase in the state's higher education budget. You want to explain what that means for the University of Oregon? Are you happy with this result?
Well, obviously we're very happy with the governor and the legislature, because compared to where we were 4 years ago when the legislature adjourned, that was very, very tough. We've built back to about where we should have been. But together with other resources and other decisions, this has been a positive legislative session. It's moving in the right direction. The governor is one of the strongest advocates of higher education of any governor in the nation, and we're very grateful and very welcoming of that. The tuition increase that was proposed is moderated thanks to a legislative buy-down. The faculty salaries and staff salaries, which were subject to a freeze and a very, very negative atmosphere 2 years ago, that's removed, and we're beginning to make progress on a build-back that we owe to those people who care so much about this place. And maybe the biggest news is that we received almost $30 million of bonding authority that will allow us to finish the theater project, for which we had a philanthropic gift that was very important. It will allow us to finish the Lillis Building Complex Phase 3, and it will allow us to go ahead with the building of a new College of Education building, which needs to match the quality of the faculty that's always nationally ranked.
Tell us about what that figure, almost $30 million, and what that means, and exactly what general obligation bonds are.
Well, these are bonds that put the authority of the state to allow us to lend money to us so that we can go ahead with construction that's much needed. What it allows, in the case of the matching money, is that we've already found it, basically. We've had donors step up as part of Campaign Oregon, which, by the way, is also on schedule. And that was a real incentive to legislators to say, well, the state, the citizens have done their part. The alumni, the friends of the university who were so generous in this regard, and it's many friends who were extraordinarily generous. That means that the state will provide that bonding money and provide for the repayment of it. And what that does is basically doubly leverage the money we get from private sources. It's an enormous incentive to private giving. And what it basically means is we've finally done our part to go forward on long deferred projects that are absolutely necessary to the university.
Yeah, well, that's a very, very hopeful sign. The idea that you could, through private donors, actually stimulate the legislature to come through with something.
Well, and we did not that we're ever in a competition in this regard, but we did better than other public institutions because we had those people who had put their faith and their dollars behind the University of Oregon, and we were, at least in private conversation, held up as a good example by legislators for how people should, why they're deserving of the commission of this bonding authority. Now, the negative price we pay is that some legislators said, well, if you do this next time, let us know ahead of time what it is you want to build so that they can plan for it. So we'll have to, in fact, I've already given notice of the next projects that we think are important for the university, for which we'll be seeking bonding authority and private funding.
Does that mean they have to approve it in a sense before? Is that put the constraints on the university?
Well, it's a constraint that we didn't have before, but it's a positive one because it shows that we're willing to think carefully about our plans for the future. We're not just opportunistic. Well, there's a plan for this building, and in these cases, of course, it's long overdue. So I think the legislature will see us as healthy partners rather than see this as an incentive to tell us not to do something.
Let me ask you about the approval. The legislature is approving $78 million for opportunity grants. You want to say let us know what an opportunity grant is and what it means for the students here.
Well, what an opportunity grant means for the students is this is where the state steps up to give scholarship assistance. Hopefully more of it in grants and less of it in loans than has been the case before. But Oregon enjoyed the unhappy reputation as giving some of the lowest state assistance to needy students of any state in the Union. And these opportunity grants allow this, what formerly was known as the State Scholarship Commission, to give more healthy grants to more students. So it's a combination of grants and loans depending upon your financial need package. But when you're looking at in-state tuition, which is now about $6,000 per year for a resident student, there begin to be those that even with a tuition discount simply can't afford, on top of that, the board, the room, the other costs of education, or perceive that they can't. And since these are the students who have the motivation to make it through here, if they feel that they have the means, why this is a particularly important group to help with this opportunity grant. And I'm pleased it had been cut way back in the past. This is a very healthy build back.
So how many students do you imagine, say, that this is actually going to help?
It's really hard.
In terms of numbers.
Yeah, it's hard to know because the mix of students and the mix of grants and loans can be varied. Mm-hmm. But we do now know that at the University of Oregon, well over 50% of our students receive some kind of financial aid. Mm-hmm. So this is a very different picture than it was 20 years ago at your inexpensive state university. They're all expensive, relatively speaking, although compared to private schools, of course, it's very, very inexpensive. But we don't want students to be deterred from coming here either by the perception or the reality that it's not affordable, because this is the single most important investment they can make in terms of their lives ever. Mm-hmm. Not a car, not a house. It's their education at a collegiate level that will make the difference in terms of their own opportunity economically to get ahead in the world. So this could not be a more significant thing for us to make a priority.
Now, you were mentioning earlier the campaign and how it's been going. You want to elaborate on that a bit. How has the campaign been progressing? Where are we at?
Well, for the viewers who aren't sure exactly what we're talking about, the campaign, it's Campaign Oregon. It's the largest fundraising drive for any cause in the history of the state, public or private. We set an ambitious goal just a few years ago of $600 million. And actually, we could use $2 billion in terms of worthy proposals to make this university even greater. But we reached the $370 million mark just a few weeks ago. That's very exciting. That means that we're ahead of schedule in terms of this campaign, which will either go till the year 2007 or 2008, depending upon whether we can receive funding for an arena. But that's a very healthy sum of money, but we're on target, and that makes me feel very good because we knew that we were setting the most ambitious goal that anybody's ever set for anything here, and we're still ahead. Very good news. Enrollments. Apparently, we have a very large enrollment this year. Do you want to say something about that? Well, a good fall, higher both in resident and non-resident enrollment than we expected. As you and I have discussed on this program before, the University of Oregon is not going to grow aggressively, both for space and size reasons and because we don't want to grow faster than the adequacy of state support per student. And if that support isn't forthcoming, then we don't want to thin the soup, the quality of the institution. But right now we're at about 20,500 students. That's a record. It feels good that students are voting with their feet to come here. They come from very long distances away, about 85 to 90 different nations, as well as nearly every state in the union, with a very large number of students from the region, but not resident of Oregon, coming here as well. So that feels good. It feels good that you're a place that students want to come, that they're willing to make a significant family sacrifice because they believe in the quality of the place. And it gives us a sense of both robustness and diversity of student body that always puts a big smile on my face this time of year. Now, tell us about a less smiley topic, the Hurricane Katrina students. You want to say something about how many do we have here, and what has been the contribution of the university to this catastrophe? Yeah, I'm very proud of the university that it responded so quickly. We have several faculty members from Tulane and Loyola. We have probably 35 students, I guess, give or take a few, several in professional schools, a number of undergraduates, and from a variety of institutions, Tulane, Loyola, New Orleans University, and some of the smaller universities from the Gulf states. They've been enabled by financial assistance, or in some cases, if they'd already paid tuition to their home institution, we took them as a courtesy as visiting students. I think just geographical distance has kept us from
Sure.
from the vast numbers that, say, Texas and Emory and some of the schools in the South or Southwest have had. But I think good people have stepped up and done their part. They've found a place for students. Faculty have tutored them. I think Oregonians ought to feel really good about a response to their fellow citizens in distress and actually doing something very concrete about allowing them to continue their education or their scholarly work.
Now, Dave, you mentioned earlier about the building that's projected. Of course, we've had some wonderful buildings that have been completed. One of them is the reopening of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. Do you want to say something about that? And recently, the Chinese and Japanese art galleries have opened. You want to say something about this development?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I thank you for the opportunity. We almost exactly a year ago, last year, we opened the renovated, doubled in size art museum, and believing then that it would be a magnet for the arts even more than it had been in its past, believing even then that it would be a force external to the community as well as internal to the campus, and all of that's coming true in just a remarkable way. The two galleries you just referred to have opened up with exhibits that are of the quality that it is appropriate to a major university art museum. We're now one of the 15 largest collegiate art museums in the nation, and proud of it. We have a special focus on Asia, but not only Asia, also the Pacific Northwest art. So there are ways in which we're really showcasing being a magnet for the arts that simply were not possible without the physical space to do it. And a more or less unintended, not unintended, but unexpected benefit just in terms of the volume of requests is the use of these new facilities for community events, for faculty events, for student gatherings. So the revised, renewed Jordan Schnitzer Museum is what a great museum like that at the heart of a campus should be, but maybe even more than we expected.
Well, we're all very excited to have that facility here. The U of O's diversity plan. Greg Vincent left the university. What are the plans for the future?
Yeah. Well, Greg has been succeeded on an interim basis by Charles Martinez, who's well known to this community as a very distinguished member of our school board, as well as a very distinguished researcher in the field of education itself. Very skilled at bringing people together of widely diverse backgrounds. There's no question that we had speed bumps and rough times with some people not understanding that the first draft that we issued of that plan was exactly that, was a draft. But there are issues of language, there are issues of terminology, there are deeper issues of what's really expected of people and how do they know it, and how, beyond that, how do they do it? You know? Are we really used to the notion of what it means to live in a cultural, multicultural world when Oregon's pretty ethnically homogeneous? It is becoming less so, and the Census Bureau tells us that, and that's sort of the canary in the coal mine, to mix a metaphor terribly, that tells us we ought to do something before it becomes a flashpoint. And I think we've had a very capable group of people work through the summer on the Diversity Executive Working Group, people who were quite deliberately chosen because their viewpoints are not the same, but who found a remarkably rich dialogue with each other and who are busily working on draft after draft of steadily improved proposals for the university by which we can develop then a 5-year diversity plan that puts us in the forefront and not playing catch-up. So this is not an easy topic on which to have a discussion that's very searching, because the moment you become searching, it becomes uncomfortable for people. But we are having those dialogues on campus in places where they need to happen, and they need to happen in our larger community, and I'm talking now about the state and region, not just the University of Oregon. In many ways, we're sort of the bellwether institution of much larger movements in our society. And we need to have these discussions, and I'm pleased of the people of good faith who've given their time to make it happen constructively.
Are we doing something more in Portland? I imagine Portland must be the most diverse place in Oregon. What about the connections there in terms of bringing more people from diverse backgrounds into the state?
Well, Portland is, as our listeners may know, the single largest place where we recruit students anyway. Largest number of our alumni, largest number of our students, largest number of our donors, largest numbers of our potential students. And so we do actually have outreach programs to to Portland in a variety of ways that are proving to be successful. College recruitment isn't always easy. Your message isn't always heard when you want it to be, but that certainly is an area. Portland has always been an area of focus, and some of us here feel, of course, that it's a little bit like out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're 110 miles to the south on I-5, and that may seem to be off the planet. So we need to be present in Portland in a reciprocal way, and a lot of the last several years' effort have been to increase the visibility of the university statewide, but particularly in the Portland metro area.
In the minute and a half or so left, I wanted to make sure to ask you about the U.S. Supreme Court. Your name came up recently as a possible nominee. So how did you feel about that, if you don't mind my asking you?
No, I don't mind you asking. I felt quite stunned by it.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, Senator Kennedy offered my name up. He didn't ask my clearance ahead of time, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know that one does. No, it's obviously flattering. There's no more chance of my being asked to do that under all of these larger circumstances than my flying to Mars. But of course, I've argued numerous cases to the Supreme Court. I've studied it as a constitutional lawyer. I've practiced the kind of law when I was the state's attorney general that court deals with. And you can't grow up in that environment without believing of the enormous importance of this court as an institution of final judgment as well as an institution of law and policymaking.
So it's good for us, good for the university that we have at least a potential Supreme Court nominee as our president.
Well, I think you should say suggested.
Suggested.
Potential.
Yeah, it's suggested. Well, Dave, on that note, it's always good to talk with you. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Well, thanks, Steve. I enjoyed it, as usual.
Thanks for watching. We've been speaking with the University of Oregon President Dave Frohnmayer.